Today's class is dedicated by Chana Khan as a schus, as a merit for Zera Chaya V'Kayama, healthy children, for Tova Rachel Bas Devora, and for Miriam Bas Esther Rivka. Amen. May you be blessed with Zera Chaya V'Kayama, Larichis Yamim V'Shanim Teves, healthy and happy, and with abundance. Okay, the truth is that we didn't finish the previous Maimah, which was Rani V'Simchi Torah Mekates, although we finished a section about the rhythm of breathing and how it's aligned with the cosmic breathing and universal breathing and Ratzai and Shaiv and the Yud and the Hey Kaila Neshama Tal Yudke. But since it's the weeks before Yud Shvat, so every year we do the Basi Legani, so I just realized if we want to finish, I have to start this Maimah already. So we'll have to get back to that Maimah, Bli Neder, as they say, Oid Chazayin L'Mayat. So today we'll begin a new Maimah that was said by the Lubavitcher Rebbe on Yud Shvat, Tovshin Chof Hei. Yud Shvat, 1965, Wednesday, Yud Shvat at the Farbrengen. It begins Basi Legani. Here you have a kuntras. As you see, the kuntras, this is by Mari Basi Legani, Tovshin Chof Hei and Tovshin Mem Hei, which means by Mari Basi Legani both of 1965, 1985. Why are we learning this year, Tovshin Chof Hei? Last year we learned Tovshin Chof Dala, the year before we learned Tovshin Chof Gimel, the year before we learned Tovshin Chof Bais, etc. So,
repeat it every year. Repeat it every year.
But yeah, repeated the same beginning.
No, I like it.
Yeah, the same beginning every year. So the very brief, I shared this in previous years, but very briefly, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, Kvayt Kedushas Admur Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Shneerson, so he escaped Nazi-occupied Warsaw, and he arrived in America March 1940. Tes Oder Bais Tovshin. He arrived to the New York Pier, and he settled in Brooklyn. First he was in a hotel for a few months, and then he settled in Brooklyn, and the last years he was physically very ill. It was very hard for him to speak. So usually in all the Rebbes of Chabad saying my Mari Chassidus that's what they did every Shabbos, every Yom Tov, like you see from the Alter Rebbe. Long Maimarim explaining the foundational ideas of Pnimiyus HaTorah. But the later years, instead of saying the Maimarim, so for Yom Tov or for special occasions, he would publish a Maimar. It was hard to say, so he would publish a Maimar. Usually what he said years earlier, and he wrote it down and it was published. Yud Shvat, the 10th of Shvat, is the yahrzeit of his grandmother. Her name was Rebbetzin Rivka, the wife of the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Reb Shmuel. His wife was Rebbetzin Rivka. He was a son of the Tzemach Tzedek, a grandson of the Baal Tanya. She passed away, Yud Shvat, Tofresh Ayin Daled, 1914. Yud Gimel Shvat, the 13th of Shvat, is the yahrzeit of his mother. Her name was Rebbetzin Shterna Sarah, the wife of the Rebbe Rashab. She passed away, Tovshin Bais, already in New York, 1942. So that year, Tovshin Yud, 1950, the Rebbe Rayatz gave out a long Maimer. The Maimer began with the words of She'ashirim chapter 5, Basi Legani, Achaisi Kala, which basically means I've come to my garden to be with my sister and my bride. This is a metaphor for Hashem saying, Basi, I came, and according to Chazal, the Medrash says that this was written by Shlomo Melech about the day that the Mishkan was constructed. That day Hashem says, Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. Of course, Shlomo built the first Beis HaMikdash, so that was a continuation of that. I've come to my garden. That's She'ashirim. So the Maimer, every Maimer begins usually with a pasuk or a Maimer Chazal. That's the Maimer that the Rebbe Rayatz gave out. It was published on Friday. Tes Shvat, Shabbos was Yud Shvat, the 10th of Shvat. Friday was Tes Shvat. Erev Shabbos Parshas Boy, Tes Shvat. He gave out this Maimer. The Maimer had 20 chapters, a long Maimer, and he gave it out in 4 Hemsheichim, meaning to be published for 4 occasions. The first 5 chapters, Yud Shvat, the yahrzeit of his grandmother. The second 5 chapters for Yud Gimel Shvat, the yahrzeit of his mother. The third 5 for Purim, and the last 5 for Beis Nissen, which is the yahrzeit of his father, the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, who passed away in 1920. He's buried in Rostov, on the Don River in Russia. So they were learning this Maimer Basi Legani. That morning, Shabbos, Yud Shvat, Parshas Boy, around 10 to 8 in the morning, the Rebbe Rayatz passed away. He passed away in 770 in his house on the second floor. Sunday was the funeral, was Yud Aleph Shvat. So he's buried at the Oyel in Queens, which they call the Oyel today, in the Montefiore Cemetery. Nobody expected it. It was, the Rebbe Rayatz wasn't feeling well. I mean, for years he was suffering, but it was a sudden, it was a heart attack, I think. So it came out, so with all the grief and the shock and the sadness, etc. But it happened to be that for the Shabbos that he passed away, he gave it a maimer to learn. I once saw the original maimer. It says Shlita, always in front. It says Shlita. The Yud in Shlita was missing. It was in the second page. I think the Yud in Shlita was missing. It was Yud Shvat, and of course he passed away. So it happened to be that for that Shabbos, he gave to learn something which happened to be his Yistalkas. The Rebbe, No, I'm saying when they published it, it was a mistake. You know how it is. It was interesting. I saw once that the word Shlita fell out from Tosat Fus, whatever the Zetzer, it's before computer age. It's 1950. It was just on the by the Sharblat or the second page, I think. Where they say we're giving out a maimer, etc. Pesach Dover. The Rebbe Rayatz had 3 daughters. He didn't have sons. The youngest was burnt in Treblinka. She was gassed with her husband. Her name was Shena. The 2 older survived. The oldest named daughter was Chana. She married a person known as Rashag, Rabbi Shmayahu Gurari, whom I remember. And the middle one, Rebbe Chaim, married the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was then called the Ramash. But for a whole year, he didn't want to become a Rebbe. The Rebbe, he refused. He said, the Rebbe never told me, it's not my thing. And he really refused. I once heard from Rabbi Yoel Khan. He was there. Then he said that the Rebbe once said, if you continue to nudge me, I'm going to take my wife and we're going to move to an island for the rest of our life. And nobody's going to know where I am. And Rabbi Yoel said the Rebbe wasn't, he didn't exaggerate. When he said it, he meant it. That's what I heard from Rabbi Yoel. He's going to go away, I don't know the word island, he's going to go away to some remote location, nobody's going to know him. No, they should stop nudging. At the first anniversary of Yud Shvat, there was a Farbrengen. Yud Shvat, Tovshin Yud Aleph. This is already 1 year later, 1951. And the Rebbe was Farbrengen upstairs in 770. If you know 770, this small shul, it's called the Zal. It's mamish a small shul, but it was packed. And this was already the year of letters and this, and in the middle of the Farbrengen, this I heard, I think, from Rabbi Leibel Groner. The Rebbe was saying a lot of sichos. It was beautiful sichos. There's a tape from it. It was recorded on audio. And then there was an old chassid, his name was Nemtsov, Sender Nemtsov from London. And he stood up on the table and he said that all the sichos are beautiful. Aber mevilas the Rebbe soll sagen Chassidus. That the new Rebbe should say Chassidus. So nobody knew what's going to happen. But a few moments later, the Rebbe started this maimer. Basi Legani. He said the maimer that the Rebbe gave out for his own Yom Istalkos. A year later, he begins Basi Legani. Very, very emotional. I mean, the sobbing in that maimer was, you can hear it. It's life changing. That was Tovshin Yud Aleph, and the focus of the Rebbe's first maimer. This was his first maimer as a Rebbe, and it represented in Chabad. It represented that he accepted, so to speak, the mantle of leadership. And he published that maimer sometime later, and it was based on the first chapter of Basi Legani. The whole maimer was like a analysis and development of every line in the first chapter. The second year, Tovshin Yud Bais, he also said the maimer Basi Legani, and the main focus was on the second chapter, Perek Bais. And so each year, the Farbrengen of Yud Shvat, the Rebbe would say the maimer Basi Legani, summarize the main points until that chapter, and then focus on the chapter of that year. Tovshin Yud Gimel, 1953, was Perek Gimel. Remember, it has 20 chapters. So Tovshin Chaf Hey, 1965, was Perek Tesvav, the 15th chapter. Because Yud Aleph was chapter 1, Yud Beis chapter 2, etc., etc. Chaf Hey, Tovshin Chaf Hey was chapter Tesvav, chapter 15. Tovshin Lamed, 1970, he finished. He finished the 20th chapter, Yud Shvat. Tovshin Lamed Aleph, 71 at the Farbrengen, the Rebbe began the second cycle. And a whole different way of explaining it, actually a different focus. And that continued again for the second cycle, all the way through Tovshin Memches, 1988. Then I was there already. And that's when he explained Perek Yud Ches, chapter 18. After that, his wife passed away that year, and the Rebbe a few months later stopped saying Maimarim. So he never finished the second cycle. Not chapter 19 and not chapter 20. The last two were missing. But Tavshin Memches was 18, Memtes was 19, Tavshin Nun was chapter 20, and then Tavshin Nun Aleph, 91, began the new cycle. Again, the third time.
Sounds like he was saying it for his wife, for the Rebbe. Unless she was nifter.
I don't know exactly the reason. It was a few months later that Rebbe stopped saying my mother. I don't know why. Huh?
71.
Oh, sorry, Tavshin Nun Aleph. No. Nun Aleph, 1991 was the third cycle. 71 started the second cycle. 1951 was the first. 1971 it resumed, second time, and 1991 it resumed the third time. Nun Aleph, yeah.
He started again from Aleph.
The Rebbe, no, already after Tavshin Memches, the Rebbe didn't say my mother anymore. But the Olam was learning it again. I meant that the learning happened the third time, not the... Tavshin Ayin Aleph, that's 1991, right? That's Tavshin Nun Aleph. And then there's Tavshin Samach Ayin Aleph, which is 2011, began again. So this year is Tavshin Pei Hey. So that's why we're learning the Maimer of Tavshin Chafei, which is chapter 15, focused on chapter 15. That's why it says in the front Tavshin Chafei and Tavshin Memhei, because Tavshin Chafei was the first cycle, Tavshin Memhei was the second cycle. Where the Rebbe said it again. So he would start the Maimer, he would summarize very fast, a few minutes, everything up to the chapter of that year, whatever the chapter was, and then the rest of the Maimer would tune into the theme of that chapter. So this year, Tavshin Chafei, he was focusing on Perek Tesvav. That's the very brief backdrop in terms of history of it. Every chapter had a different theme. Every chapter is a different theme. It's a development of one theme, but every chapter focuses on a different thing. So we had discussed the last years to do it each year and finish the Maimer. They're incredible Maimarim. And this year, especially, is Hafla de Maimer. It really dissects one of the most complex, intriguing, fascinating, and really life-changing sugyas in the whole world of Kabbalah and Chassidus, which is known as the sugyas at Tzimtzum. The sugya of Tzimtzum, which Tzimtzum is something that Arizal developed. This expression that Arizal is the one who revealed what's called Soidat Tzimtzum, the secret of the Tzimtzum. And the Tzimtzum itself is one of the great mysteries and foundational ideas in Pnimiyus HaTorah and Teres HaKabbalah and Chassidus. And the Perek Tesvav of Basi Legani, the Rebbe Rayatz, and in this Maimer, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, really dissects the sugya of Tzimtzum from many, many different angles and aspects. And as always, the main focus is the Avodah, how it applies to people's lives in the very visceral and practical and daily life. Okay, so let's begin. I'm also going to announce, just because of scheduling, and I'm traveling to Eretz Yisrael next week, so Be'ezer Hashem, there's going to be a shir also tomorrow, which is Friday, Be'ezer Hashem, 8 o'clock here, and also Sunday. So tomorrow Sunday, Monday I'm not here, but next Wednesday morning, we'll also have a shir. So we'll be able to cover some ground, Be'ezer Hashem, because then I'm traveling to the Holy Land. Okay, so let's begin. You see the headline is Yud Shvat Tavshin Chafei. In the Kuntus, if you open it up, it's which page? It's page Yud. It's also posted on the yeshiva.net, the text. Basi Legani Achaisi Kalo. Pasuk says in Shashirim, if you see footnote number 1, he says, Maimer Zem Yusud Be'ikrei Al Perek HaChamisha Asem Mehemshech Basi Legani Tavshin Yud. This Maimer is primarily based on the 15th chapter of Basi Legani, Tavshin Yud, which is the original Basi Legani of the Rebbe Rayatz, 1950. Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. The Pasuk says in Shashirim, right at the beginning of chapter 5, I've come to my garden to be with my sister, Achaisi, with my Kala, with my bride. Maybe Baal HaYilula Maimer HaMedrash. So the Baal HaYilula means the one whose yahrzeit it is on this day, Yud Shevat. He brings in his own Maimer, in the Maimer of Basi Legani Maimer HaMedrash, what it says in Medrash. On Shir HaShirim, there's a Medrash known as Shir HaShirim Rabbah, Medrash Rabbah Shir HaShirim. So the Medrash says over there, Legani, the word Legani is Lignuni. Lignuni is a term that meant a chuppah, a canopy, that they usually used to construct for the chassan and the kala to spend time of leisure after the wedding. And that's where they would have feastings and sheva brachas and meals. It was like a special chuppahs chassan, like a special canopy and a beautiful pavilion, you would call it probably today, or a tent. We have tents here. We have a lot of gnunis around here, so you know what a tent is. And this is where the chassan and kala would, so to speak, I don't know, hang out, or in America they would say chill, but probably the right word would be where they would spend time. It was a private section over there, and they would spend time, and that's where the Sheva Bracha, people would come there. So the Medrash says that Legani is Lignuni, the same idea. Hashem says, I'm coming not stam, I'm coming to be with you in a house, or to be with you somewhere in the street. It represents Lignani l'makom shaya ikri betchila. I'm coming to the place, Gnuni is the place where the chassan and kala, that's where they spend their time. They may go on a walk. They may go visit the shviga. You have to go visit the shviga. But where do they spend the time? Where is their place? Where do you, like what we call home sweet home, right? You don't need a reason to go home.
Where the relationship began.
Where the relationship began, yeah. Where the relationship began and it takes root, that's what the Gnuni is. What's the point? So the Medrash says, L'makam shaya ikri betchila. Hashem is saying, I'm coming back to the place where my essence was in the beginning. The Iker Shchina B'Tachtonim Haisa. It's a fascinating Medrash. This is the words of the Medrash. Because the primary essence of the Shchina of the Divine Presence was B'Tachtonim in this world, in the lowest reality. Iker Shchina B'Tachtonim Haisa. So the Basi, I'm not just coming in like a new guest to the world. I'm coming back, Legani. This is Lignuni. This is where I got married. This is where I spent time after I got married. This is the place where, I was born, so to speak. You would say you were born and bred and developed your relationships. This is where your identity was formed. So what does God say? Well, this is the place. The pshat is l'makam shayich b'tchila. This is where it used to be here. This is where it all started. This was the main objective. The Shechina wanted to be here. So what happened? So why are you coming back? Why did you leave? This is the matter. Then in Adam. Not every relationship works out the way people would like it to work out. So there was a gnuni. But somehow, in the first day after the wedding already, things got sour. Yeah? And it's usually around food, right? Food always plays a big role. So through the sin, what we call the tree of knowledge, Adam Silek, he removed the Shechina from the earth to heaven. Of course, spiritually speaking, what this means is that the intimate expression and presence of the divine in the garden, in the chuppah, in the gnuni, in the relationship, was not manifest anymore. The Shechina now went up a notch, so it exists in a more, you would say, a transcendent space. And then the Medrash continues, generations afterwards, they transgressed or bypassed the Tzivui Hashem, the manual of Hashem, the commandment of Hashem. It departed from heaven to heaven all the way to the seventh. And he goes through 7 major, colossal failures, moral failures, that each one further alienated the man, the human species, from itself, from the Shechina. He goes through all the Avedas over there. And each one, the Shechina goes to a higher heaven until it goes to the Kiyashvi. Says the Medrash, and then come tzaddikim, beacons of moral light, the fathers of the world. Fathers of the world, meaning the ones who begin fixing the world. And they begin to spin, to reverse the process. And he goes through 7 tzaddikim, until the 7th. He goes through Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Levi and Kahas and Amram, and number 7 is Moshe. V'kol Ashvin Chaviv, v'shekol Ashvin Chaviv, and the Medrash says elsewhere. All 7s are beloved. The number 7 has something special, like Shabbos is number 7, Shemitah is number 7. Huh? Your mother's name was what? Sheva. So your mother is number 7. Very good. Kol Ashvin Chavivin, v'yiridim min Rakiya La'aretz. And Moshe Rabbeinu brings the Shechina from the Rakiya, from the first Rakiya down to the earth. Avraham Avinu lowers it from 7 to 6, and Yitzchak from 6 to 5, and you have Yaakov, again Levi, Kahas, Amram, and then you have Moshe as the 7th, and he brings it back. So that's why Basi Legani, finally I came back. I was expelled from my chuppah. I was expelled from my garden. Gani also literally means garden. And now I came back. That's why he says Legani. It was Legnuni. It's not like a new place. This is where I always wanted to be. This is my place. This is all what the Medrash says. This was always the purpose. In other words, the expulsion, the alienation wasn't a permanent thing. It was part of a process of repair, of rupture. So the departure wasn't a departure that was meant to be permanent, and then, I changed my mind, I missed my chuppah. That's what he says. This was ultimately the purpose, to come back liyas b'tachtoina. Because this is where the whole essence is. This is where my essence is. This is my primary function is. Now it's interesting, when the Rebbe would repeat the Maimer, the beginning seems very similar, but each year he would say it a little differently, consistent with the main theme of that year's Maimer. So like just this detail. The Makar means that this was the whole kavan of the departure. Later you see that the whole way he explains that Tzimtzum is really explaining this point. So it's interesting. He says the introduction to the Maimer, every year it says a little twist, but it's completely b'diuk to what the main point is going to be brought out. Like just even this detail. Shazu ha'isa kavana. This is what the Pasuk says in Tehillim. Das steht schon in Tehillim. I see in the footnotes, Lamed Zayin. This is what all from the Maimer Basi Legani. The Pasuk says in Tehillim, Tzadikim yirshu aretz v'yishkenu la'adallah. The Tzadikim will inherit the land, and they will eternally dwell on it. So literally, the Mefarshim say, what is it talking about? Is it talking about Eretz Yisrael? Is it talking about Olam Haba? So he teaches, Hainu shein yonam v'avedasim shel tzadikim, amich kulam tzadikim, hu lasis dira le'yizbarach b'tachtaina. The main avodah of tzadikim, when we say tzadikim here, we're not talking about a few individuals. You have to know, when it says a tzadik, what are you referring to? You're referring to the essence of every person. V'amich kulam tzadikim. In other words, when you take away the blockages and the layers, as the Pasuk says in Yeshaya, v'amich kulam tzadikim, your whole nation is tzadikim. So when it says here tzadikim, he says you're not talking about a few individuals. You're talking about the whole purpose. The reason dietra, the modus operandi of the Jewish people is lasas dira lo yizbarach b'tachtoinim. What does it mean? To construct a dira, a home for Hashem b'tachtoinim. Tachtoinim literally in the lowest reality. That's the avodah of the tzaddik. Yirshu aretz. So what's the idea of dira b'tachtoinim? Essentially, basi legani achaysi kala. To be able to reveal the Shechina, that it shouldn't remain barakia, it should be ba'aretz, it should be in the earth. So there should be a reunion, and an intimate reunion, to the point of dira b'tachtoinim, where the divine presence is manifest and present fully within the person and within the world. And within the person doesn't just mean in the person's abstract layers, in the person's heavenly parts. That would be like keeping it in rakia. When we say embodiment, we talk about embodiment, visceral experience, bringing it into the person's life, that it's embodied in your nervous system, in your brain, in your heart, in your soul. That's all dira b'tachtoinim. In a person, it's himself. There's heaven and there's earth, right? I have heaven and I have earth. You also have heaven. Everybody has heaven and earth. Heaven is, what do you say, knocking on the door? What do you say? Heaven is the heavenly parts of a person. Earth are the earthly parts of a person. Dira b'tachtoinim means it's in the earthy parts, in the earthly parts of the person. That's where the Shechina was looking to be. That's where I want to be. Lignuni. Don't send me away to the rakia. Right? The parts that we often want to avoid, or we don't want to look at, or we're embarrassed of, or we're ashamed of. That's the purpose. Open the door. That's where I want to go. Don't close the door on that. That's where. So dir b'tachtonim is not just the world, the physical world. It begins with the person. Of course, the world is an extension of the person. Because through their avoid, the avoid of Amacholim Tzaddik, in two things: skafia sitrach and hapcha sitrach. Skafia sitrach means subduing unholiness. Sitrach means the other side, and hapcha sitrach means transforming the other side. And these are two stages in avodas Hashem that we often talk about: skafia and hapcha. Skafia is the clarity and the differentiation of what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is toxic, what is not toxic, what is moral, what is immoral, and then choosing the person you want to be and manifest at this moment. Hapcha is even deeper, where you transform. Skafia itself is already very profound. Skafia means the ability to subdue, to surrender the sitra achra, to know who's going to sit on the driver's seat and hold on to the driver's wheel, even though there's a backseat driver with a lot of voices telling you to take the light. You ever have those people in your car? You're also the backseat driver. Sometimes the driver himself is, in this case, it's the same. So there's always the voice, you're going wrong, you're going wrong, especially before the days of Google Maps. It was, world wars and cars. So you can have voices, but who's going to hold on to the steering wheel? Iskafia means you know very well who should be holding on to the steering wheel. Hapcha means you actually transform it. So that's a much deeper phase. So through this avoidus, it says, this is an expression of the Zohar in Parshas, Parshas Truma. Yeah. Zohar Chelik Bais, Parshas Truma. The Zohar says that Kadeskafia Sitra Achere is stalik, Yikara. Yikara means the glory, the kavod. The stalik, Yikara Kshabrichu. The glory of Hashem departs. Stalik means it extends, it expands. But Kulu Almin in all of the worlds. Through Iskafia Sitra Achere. So he teaches in the Maimer, Hainu Shemeiru Mizgala Eira Seviv Kalalman, Shazau Yikara de Kuchabrichu, Shubachulu Alman Beshava, de Kayal Eira Seviv Kalalman, Shemeiru Bechalalam is Beshava. When he says Istali Yikara de Kuchabrichu Bechulu Alman, he's talking about that you access the light that we call Seviv Kalalman, the light that transcends all of the world. This is Yikara de Kuchabrichu, the glory of Hashem, not just the light that's limited and defined within the parameters of every world, but the light that's Bekulu Alman. It extends in all the worlds. It's that light that is in all the worlds in an identical fashion because it's Seviv Kalam. So it doesn't just mean in Zohar you reveal the light in all of the worlds. It's that light that automatically when it comes out, it's in all of the worlds B'Shava because it's Seviv Kalam and it's the pure infinity which transcends the individual world. That's Seviv Kalam. Uba'ofen shel istalik. And in a way of istalik, Alter Rebbe explains in Torah, what's istalik? Istalik, usually we use the word histalkos. Stalkus. What does stalkus mean? When somebody passes away. Stalkus means lihistalek, like bistalik ha'anan, when the anan departed. So what's istalik yikara de kuchabrichu b'chulu alman? So Chassidus teaches, Alter Rebbe teaches, when the oir hasev of kol alman is nizgala, it's nizgala in the oifen of istalik, in the oifen of reimamus, meaning it doesn't get dumbed down and compromised. It remains in a state of reimamus, of exaltedness, not becoming limited by the individual keli. So istalik represents not that it leaves, but rather that it remains in its full transcendent, and therefore it's above the individual vessels because it's Seviv Kalalman, which is not diluted or minimized or compromised. That's what he says, Ba'ofen shel istalik.
It's like a property of physical light also, because physical light doesn't slow down. It's 300,000 kilometers per second, or whatever miles per second.
300 kilometers per second, yeah.
The interesting thing is that it doesn't matter, you know that it's come from one source. Why? Because here it's also come from one source, because no matter what, even if the light goes against each other, that if you measure it, it's still 300,000 kilometers. It's not plus. It's just one. Anytime you measure it anywhere else in the world, it's the same.
Wow. So it's interesting, in the Maimed, the original Basi Legani of the Rebbe, he explains this idea of istalik. And in the footnote over there, the Rebbe who made the footnotes on the Maimer brings this inyan, that histalkos doesn't mean leaving, it means a different type of revelation. In the first chapter, and that day was the histalkos. Literally, that day was the histalkos. So it was a fascinating thing. He's pointing to that, because what does histalkos really mean? On one level, we call it death, but what does death really mean? On a spiritual level, it doesn't mean that the neshama is gone. It means the neshama is present in a different way. What type of way? In a way of reimamus, in a way of sovev kalam. In a way, it could be a deeper presence, but it's not a presence that's, so to speak, dumbed down. Now, we do like the dumbed down presence because unbound, yeah, completely unbound. Like the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya after the Petira of Reb Mendel Haradaka, he wrote a beautiful letter to the Talmidim in Eretz Yisrael. They were very shattered. So he wrote there that when the neshama, it's in Tanya Negeres HaKodesh, Chav Zayin. So he says that when the neshama is alive, when the neshama is in the body, so it's filtered through the guf. So you can only access the neshama through the kalim of the guf, because that's how it is. That's what it is, which is an amazing thing. But all the properties of the soul are there pre it coming into the body. For example, we call vision. Vision doesn't begin with the eye. Vision, the soul has vision. What type of vision does the soul have? The Gemara says in Nida, in the womb of its mother, it sees from one end of the world to the other end of the world. When it comes into the body, now it has to eclipse all of the other forms of vision. Now it's working only through the eye. Sorry, this is my job. I work through the eye. So now it assumes the limitations of the physical retina. The same is true with hearing. The same is true with understanding. How much is the soul capable of comprehension? Infinite. We don't even know. But now I have to work through the physical brain. That's what it means. The neshama is melubish on the guf. It's channeled through the body. So histalkos doesn't mean the neshama is gone. It means the presence of the soul is not through the kalim of the guf. So in many ways, its presence is much less limited, Alter Rebbe says. But it's still difficult, it's challenging, because we relate to people through their body. I want to see you, I want to touch you, I want to hear you, I want to embrace you, I want to communicate to you viscerally through the five senses of the body. So that's the taicha. We taicha is a stalik that you see from the Zohar. Doesn't mean it's gone. The whole idea is bekulu alman. Istalik means it's in a way of istalik. The Maimon continues, this is the meaning of the pasuk in Truma. You should build for me a mikdash, a sanctuary, and I will dwell in them. As the Mefarshim say, it should have said v'shachanti b'soichai. Grammatically, the mikdash is one word, so it should say v'shachanti b'soichai. What's v'shachanti b'soicham? It's one of these grammatical errors, so to speak, in the pasuk that points to a whole different meaning. V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'soichai. He doesn't say v'asu li mikdashos or batei mikdash. V'asuli mikdash. Mikdash means one sanctuary. V'shachanti b'soichai, in it. You say, build me a home, so I should be able to dwell, not in them, in it. What's in them? So right away he's saying, build me a Beis HaMikdash. But don't think that you have a house for me and that's it. V'shachanti b'soicham. The reason you're building a Beis HaMikdash is that I should be able to dwell in you. The house is the epicenter, but it's really about the microcosm, about the individual experience. This is what's brought in the Mefarshim. These are the people, the tzaddikim. That yishkenu la'adalah. Say, Taichas, what's yishkenu la'adalah? Not that they will dwell eternally on it. Yirshu oretz, they change the eretz, the dirib tachtoinim. And yishkenu, he says, mashkinim, they bring down that which is la'ad, that which is eternal, Allah, onto the earth, onto the land, which is v'shachanti b'soicham. So this is the whole process that Moshe Rabbeinu began, bringing the Shekhinah from the heaven into the earth. This is the process of Dira B'Tachtainim, which means healing the rupture, healing the alienation, the misalignment between the human being and himself or herself and the universe and its own core, to be able to recreate, and even deeper than the original vision, the original desire of Basi of Lamakim Shaya Ikri Betchila Ikr Shchina B'Tachtainim Maisa, on which the pasuk says Basi Legani Achaisikala. Omamshech Levayer, he continues to explain in the Maimer. This is a summation of the first chapter of the original Basi Legani. He continues to explain from chapter 2 and on. The main avoid in the Mishkan and the Mikdash, the place that the focus over there was to create the V'shachanti, is the work, the avoid of the karbonis, the daily offerings, and also the ketayros, the burning of the incense. The main idea here is Kamaimet, as it says in Zayah, Rosa de Kurban Ilas Rosa de Ein Sof. The secret of a carbon, the secret of an offering is that it goes up to the secret of Ein Sof, which means the whole idea of a carbon is, like we say, carbon from the word kiruv, is to sublimate the animal to the Ein Sof. And on this it says, on every carbon it says, Reach nichayach, so Chazal say, it's a pleasure for me, it's a delight that I said something and my will was fulfilled. So that's the concept of nachas amshachalamata, where the light comes down. The carbon is going up, oila, and that brings a flow from above downward. He explains that's why the Mishkan was built from atzei shittim. Atzei shittim is acacia wood. So the Torah says that the Mishkan was primarily built from atzei shittim. It says in Truma you should make the beams for the Mishkan, which was the main structure of the Mishkan, the foundation of the Mishkan, is made from atzei shittim, wood, of shittim, acacia wood, oimdim standing. Ki shittim amaloshin shtus kedisim Medrash. It says in the Medrash that the word shittim comes from the word shtus. The word shtus we usually translate as a shtus, as insanity. Yeah, insanity. A shaita represents an imbecile, someone who's behaving in a way that is unconventional. What's the idea of atzei shittim from the word shtus? Why do you hainu shetzarich lafich es a shtus da oilam v'lasis v'menu krashim l'mishkan? There's an insanity in the universe. If you haven't figured it out yet, when your grandmother would say Sam Reshevsky Welt, without knowing it, she was saying this word. It's a place of shtus. It's a place of insanity. And the avodah is, don't run away from the insanity. Take the atzei shittim, make from the insanity, crush him, the foundations of the Mishkan.
So without getting Mishigah, you cannot the servant. On the level of
Yet zak's the good. Rabbi Avram says if you don't become Meshuggah, you can't even begin the process. Yeah, you need to confront the Meshugas and take it. Atzei shittim. And that's idea also, you take from the shittim, you make krashim. The word keresh means a beam, but it's oisis sheker. Keresh is shin kufresh, which is a lie. The original Basi Legani explains at length the meaning of these three words: shin kufresh, kufresh shin. It's from the sheker that you make keresh. It's the same letters. So it's not just a cute little thing. It represents an idea. It's from the lie of the universe that you build the foundation of the Mishkan. You would say the lie you go away from, ignore. Sometimes you have to do that. But there's something deeper. You take the shtus and you make from it atzei shittim. You take the sheker and you make from it keresh. And the word is oimdim. What's pshat oimdim? Ke'inyan ha'amudim shemechabrim esamayla v'samamata v'samata mamayla. It's like a pillar. Oimdim is also from the word oimid, standing, also from the word amud. An amud, which is oimid, it stands. Why? Because it connects the roof with the foundation. That's what a pillar is. That's the function. When you don't have a pillar, you have a beautiful house. But what's missing? What's missing is the chibur. It's not one house. Yeah, and ultimately the ceiling can come down. So that's why the amudim are so, the pillars, they're pillars. What does that represent spiritually? That the krashim oimdim, you take the sheker and you turn it into a keresh. What's the beam? The beam essentially held up the Mishkan. You had the yeriyas, the tapestries on the Mishkan. If you didn't have the beams, they wouldn't have where to be on, so you wouldn't be a Mishkan because the ceiling, the yeriyas, the tapestries would just cave in. So what was creating the structure of the Mishkan? The sheker that becomes a keresh, and it connects heaven to earth and earth to heaven, maila and mata, mata to maila. And he uses the word ad shenasim la'achadim, until they become one. When you look at a house, you don't say, okay, this is different. It's not different homes. It's one home. It's echad. It's one mishkan. You have the top, you have the bottom, but it's one. And that's the whole idea, that when you take the sheker and you turn it into a keresh, the highest and the lowest, the maila and the mata, become completely synthesized and integrated and cohesive to the point that it's one home, which is, of course, the whole union of dire bitachtoinim. So you have to have the pillars. So paradoxically, what creates the pillars that connect the highest to the lowest? It's the shtus, the atzei shittim, because it was made from atzei shittim, and the sheker, which becomes the keresh. That's the stuff from which you build the Mishkan. L'chayre, don't build the Mishkan from these things. Go find holy things. The answer is Dira b'tachtonim. The Dira is built from tachtonim. Just like the materials. What are the materials? It's built from the tachtonim. That's what makes it a Dira b'tachtonim. So in a person's life, what it means, as we're going to see later, it's the material. What you would call the sheker, the lies, the shtus, the insanity, everything we're embarrassed of. Don't go there. No. That's what you need for your Mishkan. If you don't have that, you can't build a Mishkan.
Transform it. You don't use that. You use it in a certain formula.
You use it in a certain formula with the right ingredients and with the right perspective. Asuli mikdash, and then v'shachanti b'saychem. And that becomes the makom shayi ikri b'tchila, because that was the place I wanted to be. I was just expelled from here, but this is where I want to be, Hashem says. So don't close it. Don't close this door and write, this is the embarrassing, this is this is the boiler room. Nobody goes to our boiler room. No, I want to see the boiler room. This is where everything began. I left, okay, you forced me out of here, but now I'm coming back. So let's see what's happening here. Yes, of course, you don't take the sheker as is. You have to work with the sheker and work with the shtus. It becomes the Mishkan. Avada. This is where the avodah happens through shtus of kedusha. There's two forms of insanity. There's unholy insanity. There's holy insanity. We learned in the previous years. The Gemara says in Maseches Ksuvos that Daf Yud Zayin, that Reb Shmuel, I think it was who was it? Reb Shmuel bar Reb Yitzchak Miraked Atlas. It says in a chassan that Reb Shmuel would take hadassim and he would juggle hadassim, and he was very, very wild. He'd made it lebedik. So Amalei Reb Zeda kamachsef le'saver. Reb Zeda said the old man is embarrassing us. Rashi says he's diminishing kavod haTorah. He's dancing over there by a chassan like he was psatanze. When Reb Shmuel passed away, Ifsik Hamudah Denura ben Neila ben Kula Alma. Reb Zeda saw that there was a pillar of light that separated between him and the rest of the world. So Reb Zeda said, Ahani le'shtuse l'sava. It's the insanity of the old man that made this happen. This was his way of retracting. I said he's embarrassing us. And I tell you, so the word he uses is Ahani le'shtuse l'sava. There's actually three versions what he said. Was it the shait, the scepter of the hadas? Was it shitase, his shita, or was it his shtus? It's really all the same thing, because his shita was shtus. This is shtus de kedusha. So it's the shtus de kedusha, it's lamayla metam v'das. This world, you can't work through cold logic. People think cold logic works through the world. It doesn't. Try it, you'll see. It's a colossal failure. Because there's a shtus here. Shtus is part of the fabric of the universe. The only way to deal with shtus is the other shtus. Shtus tzelamayla metam v'das. Ani le shtusei l'sava. It's the shtusei of lamayla metam v'das that heals and transforms the shtus of this world and the shtus inside of you. You're not going to deal with your insanity unless you find your godly insanity. The hesed b'zriel. You will not be able to deal with your insanity. It's going to make you insane. Pun intended. You have to find your godly insanity. And it's not an embarrassing thing. That's called shtus. That's atzei shittim. The Mishkan was built from this shtus de kedusha. The Maimon says this avodah is done through the Jewish people when they leave Mitzrayim. They're called the first time tzivos havaya. Which literally means the soldiers of God. Why soldiers? The answer is, the definition of being in a war is identifying a quality of shtus. You can ask any soldier serving the last year in the war, the definition of war is you're operating on a completely different level. It's not a calculated operation where you're functioning in a defined term. There's an element of absolute conviction, unwavering surrender, unwavering commitment and sacrifice that even people, when they go to those places, they don't even recognize themselves. It's like a part of you comes out, which is either it could be shtus in the most dysfunctional way, Or it's shtus in the most powerful and functional way. You say, this is shtus. That's what he said about the Bzeda. You're embarrassing us. It's not what you do. There's a certain way how you have to be, you know. Come to the chasana, you know. Come with your book. Sit down. They'll put you at the head table. Maybe bracha achrita, at least edus. Better siddur kedushin. Was tanztas like that? You leave for the, you know, for the people who do this. It's a partnership. She was from the Gdolei Adar. And then the Bzeda said, I guess I got it wrong. Ahani leishtusei l'sav. There's a story about David HaMelech. You remember maybe in the Haftarah of Shmini, right? When they brought back the Aron, David brought back the Aron from the Plishtim to Ir David. So the pasuk says, "V'David mefazes u'mecharker b'chol ois lifnei Hashem." He was dancing and doing somersaults and jumping. David was also physically very athletic and whistling. So some of our say he was whistling, and he was just jumping b'cholois, and his wife, who was the daughter of Shaul, so she grew up in aristocracy, was watching from the window, and it was embarrassing for her. And as a good Jewish wife, when David came home, she gave him a piece of her mind. And the Tanakh records it, and it wasn't just a piece of her mind; it was the way a gesunte Yiddish Rebbetzin, especially a queen, and the daughter of a queen knows how to speak. And she said, you know, even the maid servants don't behave like this, she tells him. You know, the prostiakis, the pustiakis, the light-headed lowlifes, bums don't do this, what you did. And what does David tell her? David says, when you're standing in the presence of Hashem, I would wish I would humiliate myself even more. I would do it even more if I could have. And this is v'kavda, this is my covet, this is my glory. Huh? He adds over there one line and he says, Hashem chose me over your father. And nobody knows why does it come in there, because at the surface it looks like what's psashtech. So the Rebbe once explained that this was the whole machlekes of Shaul and David. It wasn't a shtech. Shaul, it says, the pasuk says in Vayishlach Shaul me Rechoves Hanar. So Chassidus teaches that the neshama of Shaul came from Rechoves Hanar, which is Bina. Shaul holach acharei atam, and that's why by Amalek he failed, because it didn't make sense to him. You have so many amazing behemoths, bring it as a carbon. That's what Shmuel HaNavi told him, Toiv shmoya mizevach toiv, lahakshiv mizevach elam. Better to listen than to bring a beautiful carbon, to obey better than the zevach, the offering of elam, of fat rams. The power of David HaMelech was, Im lo shivisi v'daimamti nafshi hagamal alei ima. He considers himself a suckling infant by his mother. David HaMelech was malchus, lesla megar maklum. He had a tremendous bittul. So David HaMelech says, this is the reason I was chosen over your father. This exact quality. I'll call upon him, this is all a dogma of Teves Hashem. That's why Teves Hashem is that in order to go to deal with the world, you have to realize that you're in an army, you're a soldier. Teves Hashem. It's not some mistake that when we leave Mitzrayim, we're called Teves Hashem. The difference between being a slave and being a leader is if you can cultivate shtus. A slave always has to be predictable, because I have to fit in. The idea of leadership, of becoming a free, molding your people is you're going to take on the world. If you're going to take on the world, you need to be a soldier. The definition of a soldier is that you're uninhibited. You're uninhibited, not in an unhealthy way, in the most healthy way. So at that moment, when they leave Mitzrayim on the mission to change the world, Basi Legani achaisi kala, you need to cultivate that power of being in an army, which is absolute conviction, unwavering commitment, and a sense of fearlessness, and the ability to be able to be so true to your truth, to your essence, even if the whole world calls you Meshuggah. But this is ahani leishtusei l'sava. This is what's called shtus. In practical terms, it means anybody who achieves real greatness in themselves, humble divine greatness in themselves, somebody's going to call you crazy. It's just the way it is. And very often it's a compliment. Not always. When somebody calls you crazy, you have to know. You know, it's like the guy who went to a psychiatrist, and he was for many years in an institution. Finally, they let him go. He was fine. And he says, but I want a certificate that I'm healthy, that I'm normal. So the doctor says, and he signs, Ploini Almoini, Shmedel Zelig Finkelstein is a healthy person. The next morning he comes to shul, he goes over to the Rav, the Chashav Rav, and he says, Du bist normal? Are you a normal person? So the Rav says, of course I'm normal. Of course, I'm leading this community for 55 years. Everybody respects me. He says, the Hostaraya? You have a proof? You have a document? He says, no. He says, Ich hab ja. I do. So he walked around and he says, Ich bin asach mehr normal wie der Rav. I am far more normal than the Rav. He has a chazaka, ich hab a shtarach. If you know in halacha, shtar is much stronger than a chazaka. Chazaka, you don't have a shtar, they let you chazaka. He said, the chazaka, maybe 3 years he was normal. Ich hab a shtar. I have a document from the top psychiatrist in Cornell that I'm normal. So the rest of his life he's walking around, Ich bin mehr normal wie der Rav. Verstehst? That's the Inyan. Yeah. So that's not the shtus we're talking about. So when somebody calls you Meshuggah, you have to know what it's coming from. But sometimes it's a very big it's a profound compliment. And when you call yourself Meshuggah, here too, you have to know. Sometimes that Meshuggas, if it's shtus de kedusha, if it's rooted in holiness, that's how you win the war. It's the only way you win the war. You don't win a war without that. And that's what people respect. That's what people respect. General Montgomery once said, he was responsible for a lot of the victories of the Second World War. He said, the difficult we do immediately. They asked him, what's your motto? He said, the difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. The difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. He got it. He was a general, so he understood that. In the Lashon of Chazal, it's Batya, Bas Para, is standing at the river, as I said in my women's class, and she extends her arm, because she sees the little basket. So the Gemara says in Soita Daf Yud Beis, her arm extends. So what does it mean? What does it mean her arm extends? If you were at a river and you stretched out your arm to save somebody, and your arm extended 300 feet, you would probably start hollering. You would call 911 and Hatzalah and Misaskim and maybe Chaver Kadisha too, and the Shaimrim and Chaverim and Mezamrim for the Hesped. Everybody, and run for your life. I mean, I think so. What's the story? What's wrong with the regular story? It's a much deeper story. It's an inyan of shtus de kedusha. If you would have asked Bastia, let's think about this logically. Let's put into artificial intelligence. Okay, this scenario here. You're the daughter of Parai. You're saving a Jewish baby, and you're going to bring him home to be raised by who? Who's going to be his Zayda? Parai is Hitler. Batya, you're Meshugana. Go to a doctor because you're Nebuch, you're an insane girl. You need help. You Pasha need help. That's what you would tell her. You're a shaita, you're Meshugana. You're a certified nut job. Do not do this. He's going to kill you and the baby. So who's going to be dead? Everybody will be dead. At least you're alive. Jewish babies are destined to this fate. Let it go. It's 1942. Hitler is running Europe. Okay? Let it go. You understand? That's how, and it makes sense. Every normal person would say that. What was the Chiddush of Batya? The Chiddush of Batya, which she said, I wasn't created to be called normal. My soul didn't have to come down, be a chelik elekamim al mamish, and come down so that the world should look at me and say, wow, you're normal. That's not what the neshama came down, that you should be called normal. People work so hard to be normal. You think that's what your soul came down for? It was Pabish Ein Soif. So I left infinity to be called what? Normal? And the more finite, the more normal. Because the more civilized. Batya says, that's not what I came down for. Batya. I'm a daughter of Yudke. I'm a daughter of God. Yudke is Ratzeh V'Shayv. So she extends her arm. Of course I'm going to save this child. And what happens? Her arm is extended. What means her arm is extended? It's a symbol that there's an invisible arm in the universe that is infinite. And when that arm aligns with your arm, you achieve the unimaginable. The difficult is immediate, and the impossible, once you have that arm, doesn't even take long. In other words, when you look at the story, she saved him, she raised him, and it was a success. There was a voice in her heart that said, I wasn't here in order to follow the logic of people who don't care that much. They couldn't care less. She extends her arm and miracles happen. That's a visceral experience of Shtus Kedusha. Did she know how it's going to work out? No. How would she know it works out? And in every person's life, there are such moments. There are such moments where you can either extend your hand or not extend your hand.
Wasn't in a way the possibility was that she actually ended up at the river itself to begin with? If she was going to do teshuva, the fact that she was actually there, that's in a way she already saw the impossibility.
Yeah. So moide de kavod from the Rakatshava. You know the word from the Rakatshava? Huh? Reb Chaim says this. Yeah, I didn't know. In Sichas Musar. In the Sichas Musar. Though for Reb Simcha Binim from Shishchen, Kol Mavasser, he speaks about this. But there's a word from the Rakatshava. The Rakatshava says, in Tzafnas Panech, this week, Shemos, it says that Yechevet took the basket and she put it, Vatosim Basuf al Sfas HaYa'ir. She put it like at the edge of the river. So like in those areas, like with this marsh, like there was green grass, it's not the river itself. It's al Sfas HaYa'ir, at the bank of the river. Later, it says that when she came down, when Baspar came down, so it's betoy chasuf, and she says, Min hamayim mishisiyu. I plucked him out from the water. So the beginning, the Targum says, Al Keif Nada. Keif Nada is not the river, it's the bank of the river, what we call the beach. She put him not in the river, she put him at the bank of the river. Later, he's inside. Min hamayim mishisiyu. Now, Kajova says, what happened? So he says, hey, he floated away. The tide came up. So that I could show by him, everything is halacha, everything is another halacha. So the Gemara says, in Saita, why did she go down to bathe? So the Pashtus, it's a nice place. I don't know, the Nile is a nice river. At least parts of it are very nice. The Gemara says, Lirchaitz migilule aviha. She went to bathe and cleanse herself from the idolatry of her father. This was a moment, she went to the mikveh, Pashat. It was like a conversion. Obviously, this is before Matan Torah, but the concept was she went for a spiritual and physical and moral cleansing. So the Rakatshava says like this: Nilus was the Avodah Zarah of Mitzrayim. They used to worship the Nilus because all the water and there's no rain. So the Nile, if you know the Nile, in August every year it's amazing. It rises and it can irrigate much of Egypt. In the 1800s, they built a dam. They stopped it, but till the 1800s, every August, the whole Nile would rise and flow and irrigate. That's why Egypt was such an incredible economy in the old world. All the papyrus and a tremendous abundance of marine life in the Nile, tremendous, the famous crocodiles and alligators, but also diversity of fish. And the economy was pumping because of the Nile. So the Nile they worshipped, and in August they would make a holiday every year for their Avodah Zarah. The Nile was their god. So the Rakatshava says, you're not allowed to have enough from Avodah Zarah, even if it's Pikuach Nefesh. So Yechevet couldn't put Moshe into the Nilus, because it's Avodah Zarah. So she put him near the Nilus. Once Basia went in to bathe, to be reichet, so there was a din of bittul Avodah Zarah. What's bittul Avodah Zarah? If a guy takes the Avodah Zarah, and he breaks off a nose, he says, this is garbage, this is garnished. So it's not Avodah Zarah anymore. By the way, only a guy could do bittul Avodah Zarah, not a Yid. So she went to bathe, so she was mavatal Avodah Zarah to the daughter of Paray. So now Moshe could go into the river. So nice Avodah Zarah. By her bathing, she made it nice Avodah Zarah, so now Moshe can go in. As I touched it, that's why he says, what that pasuk changes? Mina mayim mishisiyu. So the Tzafnas Paneach says.
She was bathing before Moshe was put in.
Yeah. So before Moshe can go in, before that you're not allowed to have enough from from Avodah Zarah. Even if it's to save a life, it's Avodah Zarah. You're not allowed to enjoy a benefit from Avodah Zarah. So Yechevet put him on the side, Al Keif Nara. Once she went in to bathe, now everything changed. Now the Nilus was just a Nilus. It's a beautiful river. Enjoy it. So now the basket go into the river, and that's Mina B'soy Chasuf. That's why the pasuk changes B'soy Chasuf. Not Al Keif Nara. It's inside. Mina Mayim Mishisiu. I took him out of the water.
So
order so she could find him, sort of like did it in the reeds. Is that the whole purpose?
Yeah, I guess that's how she took him from the water. Yeah, Minamayim Mishisiyu, yeah. So that's the concept of a soldier, Teves Hashem. As the Morim continue, chapter 11, he continues to explain deeper. But the whole concept of an army is when there's a war. You don't need an army if there's no adversity, if there's no enemy. It's in order to go out to war and win. We see Malchusa Da'ara, we see the way the world runs, that victory for the king is not just important. It touches his core. It's negeya. It's relevant to the king, deeper than everything. Va'ad shekolo oitzrus. Hein mashotzer ad vatzmai, hein mashotzer avoisav shem yikarim kol kachat shafilu ein madem oisam. Val chachas kam shem mishtamshim behem. Hine b'shvil anitzachim b'mulchama poiseach hamelech esitzreisav v'mavaz b'zoisam. Shemoisr moisam adei p'kidi achal b'shvil anshechal tivus avayk deshi natzcha b'mulchama. To the point that all the treasures of the monarch, the treasures that he gathered himself, and the treasures that he inherited from his forefathers for generations, which are so precious that sometimes he doesn't even display them. Not only does he not use them, he doesn't even show them. It's almost like the secret of the royalty, the crown jewel, You don't show them, certainly you don't use them. And suddenly when it comes to victory, if it's relevant, he's going to open them and mevazbezoisam, which means squander them. In other words, the victory is deeper than everything else, including the very crown jewel of the melech. Everything will go for the nitzachim. So in history, it's usually, the arrogance and the ego and the craziness of kings, the insanity of kings who did crazy things in order to win wars. So that's the insane part of it. But the Rebbe says there's a deeper element, and that is midas hanitzachim. When it comes to the victory of truth over lies, of good over evil, the midas hanitzachim, netzach Yisrael lo yishaka, we learned in previous years, is negeya in the deepest part. That even the treasures that have been amassed for generations, and you don't even show them, it's like the top secret, it's the intimacy of the king. He's going to not just spend, but not just give, but be mevazbez. Mevazbez is like to spend, al yivaz, squander. From the word biza, like lavuz, like it's everybody could just take it. And who do you give it to? He gives it to pkidei hachayil. Pkidei hachayil means the commanders, but for whom? For the soldiers. It's not that the commanders should go and take it home and sell it on eBay. It's bishvil anshe hachayil, it's for the foot soldiers. And that's the whole nekuda here, that there comes a time in history that the war becomes so ferocious that the king takes the oitzrus that were not made to be shown, forget about being used. They weren't made to be shown. And he gives it to the generals, to the commanders. But for who is it? It's not for the generals. It's for the anshe hachayil. It's for the people who are out there. Sometimes generals and commanders, if they don't understand who they are, they get all these oitzrus, they spend time with the king, they think it's about them. They don't understand it's for the anshe hachayil, for the foot soldier. Verstehst? This is a very deep mashal in life. You have Hashem as the king. You have Pkidei Achayil. Pkidei Achayil are, big neshamas. They have access to the oitzer, but it's not for them. It's all for the Anshe Achayil. That's what he says. Bishvil Anshe Achayil, because they're the ones winning the war. The ones winning the war, like in a chess game. The Rebbe was once Sam Reshevsky. You know who Sam Reshevsky was? Sam Reshevsky was a world-renowned chess champion. He lived in Monsey. He was a religious Jew. Him and Bobby Fischer, he played against the Soviet Union chess champions in the 1950s. He was a Frumayid. He was in Moscow in the 1950s. It was a big thing because the Soviet Union then was, it's still Stalin era, right away, post-Stalin era, Khrushchev. So the Cold War was in its, heightened state. And Sam Reshevsky represented America. A very interesting man. Reb Shmuel, his name was Reb Shmuel Reshevsky. He was a Frumayid. So he once came 770 to a Farbrengen. So the Rebbe dedicated a sikha to chess. And he explained the whole chess game al pi Chassidus. So he said then that there's two teams. One is black and one is white. Zela umazeh. Yeah. You have the king. You have the queen. That's Knesset Yisrael, Malchus. And then you have the knights and the bishops and the rooks, castles. and then you have the pawns. So he said, the Melech is Hashem, the Malka is Malchus Knesset Yisrael. And then you have Olam HaBriya, you have Olam HaBriya, Olam HaYitzirah, you have Srafim HaKodesh, Chayis HaKodesh, and Ifani HaKodesh. So you have the rooks and the bishops and the knights, and they flee in our room, they're pretty uninhibited. And then you have the pawns. And the pawns, that's neshamas down here, lamata. And they're pawns, they're on there, and they go step by step by step by step, and they get knocked off. They get knocked off, nachanand. Because they're very vulnerable. First of all, they're small. Everybody could knock them. They don't have that power, and they go step. They can't jump. They can't fly. They're limited. But then he said, when the pawn comes to the other side, it becomes the queen, which has intimacy with the king. The other ones, even on the other side, they are who they are. Malachim are called oimdim. Neshamas are called mahalchim. They come to the other side. They're transformed into Malchus Datzilis, which is one, Yisrael Malka Bil Chaydai with the Melech. He said, the Melech is the Einer, and that's the Nitzachon HaMelchama. He says, the pawns, and they go and they advance. You need the horses, but they're all there to assist the Nitzachon HaMelchama. When the horse and the bishop starts thinking about himself, I got the Yoitzis, you're missing the point. That's what he says. It's Bishvil Anshe Achayel, She'yinatzchu B'Melchama. That's what it's about. The whole idea of the general and the commander is, what makes you a general is that you're thinking about the soldier. The moment you're not thinking about the soldier, he's general. That's your whole purpose. It's not. So the moment you start taking it for yourself.
That's on the king. If the king only looks at his pawn as just a pawn that you could just do all this, then what is the pawn? But if he looks at it, this pawn has the potential to
of course.
Queen who could go in any direction. Then
of course.
that's the real
Of
king.
course. That's the pawn is the queen in making. The pawn is the queen in the making. And this Nikud is also going to be negated to the whole Maimer. Even though this is all the introduction, also going to be negated to the whole Maimer. We'll do one more paragraph. What is this Oitzer that he's talking about? So you see how it's built here. He starts off with the whole Tachlis Habriya and the Mishkan, and the Karbonas, and the Atzi Shittim, and the Sheker, and the Teves Hashem, and the war, and the Oitzer. What is this Oitzer Lamaila? So what the Nekuda is that the whole history of the Jewish people, especially right before Mashiach comes, is to win this war. When it comes that moment, the Melech squanders the deepest Oitzers. Not only treasures that are precious, treasures that were never shown before. Why is that so negeya here? Because according to the Rebbe's Vart, this is the whole Gili of Pnimiyus HaTorah. The Gili of Pnimiyus HaTorah, the Gili of Chassidus, it's this Nekud, it's the Oitzer. It's not Stam, the Baal Shem Tov came, Baal Shem Tov was born and he taught nice Vertlach. That's people who think that they're not Teufels the whole Inyan. You have to have this maimet to understand what the whole revolution is. Not Stam, the Baal Shem Tov came and said about Shalashudas, he said cute things to make people feel good, that even if you're milking your cows all day and you're not a big genius, you're still a nice Jew. The main thing is you should say Tehillim and just be a good person. That's what people think basically, a lot of people. Even Chassidim, if they have if they're illiterate, that's what they think. Moshe was a nice person. Other people were snobs. And they got caught away with their genius. And it was a nice Avadim. So he would go, he liked Prosta mention. He would go from place to place. I once heard somebody give a lecture what Chassidus is. So he said, if you're milking a cow, what connection do you have to God? So even when you're milking your cows, say, Baruch Hashem, there's good milk, and you're good to go. I bist apusta and vista amaretz. Who cares? The main thing is you said Baruch Hashem, and with this the Baal Shem Tov gave courage and hope to all the Jews who were milking cows. So the guy meant well, but his understanding of Chassidus is less than my understanding in black holes. And trust me, I don't understand black holes. Huh? Could be. I probably know more about black holes than he knows about Chassidus. Yeah. Maybe he knows what milking a cow is, even though that I don't know, but could be. Now, I don't mean to be judgmental or dismissive. He's not Teufels at the Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim. Baal Shem Tov was surrounded with 60 Talmidim who were Gaonim of the generation. You talk about the Alter Rebbe, you're talking about minds that were once it was unprecedented minds. They didn't come to hear Werte for people who are Nebuch peasants and illiterates, and you want to tell them, be a good Jew, you have an neshama, and if you say Amen Yesh Merabah with Kavana, you also have a chelik in Olam Haba, even though you're an Amaretz. You're talking here about a Gilui of Pnimiyus HaTorah. It transformed the landscape of Judaism. B'meila, it changed the perspective also how you look at Jews. That was a byproduct, but derech b'meila from an entire ma'pecha, a whole revolution, what Yiddishkeit is. Pnimiyus HaTorah. You're talking about the Maggid of Mezrich was one of the Go'inei Adar. Even people think the Baditchever, he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy, the Baditchever. The Baditchever was the Av Bezdin of 3 huge communities in Eastern Europe. The Baditchever was a Gon Olam. He was the Av Bezdin. He was an Av Bezdin. People did the Baditchever sat and he said, everybody's holy. Yeah, he said everybody was holy. But I'm saying even the Yitzchak Baditchev, who was in legend, he's just, Mr. Warm, Mr. Nice. You're talking about one of the Go'inei Adar. The Alter Rebbe, when the Baal Tanya redt man doch schon nicht. Why were they so dedicated to the Baal Shem Tov? The answer is, the Baal Shem Tov himself, the Maggid, they revealed the Oymek Pnimiyus HaTorah. That's the Oitzer we're talking about. So you say, why 300 years ago? Why 200 years ago? 300 years ago? If it's part of Torah, it's part of Torah. But the whole Torah is like that. Gemara doesn't come together with the beginning, right? First you have Chumash, you have Tanakh, you have Mishnah, and even after Mishnah, it takes hundreds of years till things develop. That's how it is. That's the system of Gilui HaTorah. The impossible takes a little longer. So the whole Nekudah here is that as the Milchama gets more ferocious, and as you come to the end, it hits very, very deep and high notes. So at that moment, because the Nitzachon is Negeya, the Etzem, deeper than anything else. So even those treasures that have to remain concealed, they're not concealed by mistake. They're concealed because that's their job. Their inyan is to remain concealed. They're concealed things. The Melech says, here, he gives it to the generals. But real generals, how do you know it's a real general? He leaves nothing for himself. I'm going to quote one of the participants in the Shir when he started to come here to the Shir a few years ago. We were learning Likutei Torah. So he said that it's unbelievable. The Alter Rebbe doesn't keep any secrets for himself. The Alter Rebbe doesn't keep any. Usually, when you have such secrets, it's the atomic codes. You keep it for yourself. Maybe one day you'll get a Nobel Prize. And it's not a temptation because you're an egotist. It's even a spiritual temptation. You don't trust people. They trusted the soldiers. Trusting people is not an easy thing. Yeah. What's the Chiddush in all the Maimonides? Alter Rebbe trusts the people. Here, let me teach it to you. And it's not trust because naivete. It's trust because understanding what's at stake in history. And what's at stake in history is that you have to be able to empower people with the deepest things that usually you would never speak about. Not because you don't speak about it because it's shameful or it's embarrassing, because it's the unspoken. It's unspoken. It's things that are lamaila from Isis. It's oitzerus. It's not the relationship that comes out. But there comes a time in history that he's mevazbez the oitzerus. But for whom? For the soldiers. And that's how you know it's a real general. A real general is everything goes. I'm just a channel. The Melech gave it to me. I'm just a channel. The plug, you put in a plug. The plug doesn't say, okay, I have electricity, let me keep it. Plug doesn't do that. That's how you know it's a good plug. And if the plug does do it, then you know it's time to cut it open and do some surgery or throw it in the garbage. How do you know it's a good plug? It channels the electricity, doesn't keep it. If the plug says you're staying inside of me, I'm not giving it over. Why should I give it to the refrigerator without it's a chedesh shait of a cotton? He's a pawn. Then you're not part of the game. Right? The moment the castle, the bishop, the knight, they start taking credit, we're running the show, you're not part of the chess game. Go find yourself another game. Real pkidei hachayil, it's always for the chayil. So what's this oitzer? What's this oitzer that we're talking about? So on this, Magdim, he gives an introduction. And this is Perek Yud Bais. In the original Basi Legani. That's where he starts explaining what's the oitzer. So for the first 11 chapters, is all the introduction to the Oitzer. Perek Yud Bais starts the Oitzer. On this Magdim Asher Kasav B'Zoyar B'Tikunei Zoyar, he brings the famous line from Zoyar, Tikunei Zoyar, Oirein Soif L'Mayla Adein Ketz L'Mata Adein Tachlis. The Zoyar says the light of infinity, the light of Hashem, extends L'Mayla, above, to no end, and it extends below to no limit. That's the expression in Zoyar. And the Maimer finishes in Perek Yud Zayin, he says, the L'Mayla Adin Ketz, that's the Oitzer we're talking about. The treasures that we're talking about is what the Zoyar refers to as Oirein Soif, L'Mayla Adin Ketz. And in order to explain what L'Mayla Adin Ketz is, you first have to understand what L'Mata Adin Tachlis is. And that's why in the previous chapters, Perek Yud Bais, and Perek Yud Gimel, and Perek Yud Daled, it's all L'Mata Adin Tachlis. Shu b'bchinas is pashtas b'bchinas ein soif ad L'Mata Mata, that the Oirein Soif extends, ein soif, infinitely, to the lowest places, b'ofen sheb'chol mokim shenim shecham L'Mata Mata, harei b'ofen shel ein soif, and wherever it extends, even in the lowest places, it remains Oirein Soif, which is infinity. And then he goes into L'Mayla Adin Ketz, which is even higher than L'Mata Adin Tachlis. That's why he first has to explain the L'Mata in order to explain the L'Mayla. And then he says, that's the treasure. And even this, the Oirein Soif L'Mayla Adin Ketz, we give to the soldiers. And not just give them in an organized, limited way, but bizbuz. Bizbuz means, hey, chap, take. It's squandered. When you're squandering something, it can be misused. Do it in an organized, controlled way, right? That's what a lot of people told Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov. You're making the Vilna Gaon himself. He said, we know about Pnimi Satayra. It's not, you don't trust the masses with these stuff. You have to have an age, it's certain neshamas. And this was a huge machlokes. You see, the whole kitrug against the Alter Rebbe was this Inyan. It wasn't a pashut thing. It wasn't like the Vilna Gaon's opposition wasn't stam opposition from nowhere. The Alter Rebbe saw it as a heavenly opposition. In other words, that's why Yutas Kislev became a Yom Tov. If it was just, a few rabble-rousers, he felt that in heaven there was opposition. In other words, you're dealing with a real struggle. You don't do bizbuz. It's just a responsible king. There's a Seder Mesuder. Bizbuz is bizbuz means anybody can come on. It's a kiddush. You're putting out everybody. Yeah, when you put out a kiddush, everybody chaps. Yeah, people put things in their pockets. Even people, and then they could misuse it. This was a very big taina. This was the big taina. Ad Kedei Kach, there was a Meiser that a Pinchas Koritzer. You know the Meiser. The Pinchas Koritzer was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov. He was a captain. He was what's the word in English? He had the Midas HaGvura. He was a very intense person. A very emes person, but very intense. I don't want to use that word, but he was a very holy man, but he was tough on himself. He was tough on himself. But mainly when you're tough on yourself, you're tough. He was a holy man, but he was very Midas HaGvura. They say after the Baal Shem Tov passed away, he once asked the Taldas Yaakov Yosef why the Magid took over the Baal Shem Tov and not him. Because the Pinchas Koritzer was a very holy man. You know how people are smart. So he looked at him and he said, when we go through Kriyas HaTorah, sometimes you have to connect Parshas. So Chukas Balak go together. Matas Maseh go together. Pinchas is always himself. His name was the Pinchas. Why? He says, well, I was given a kanoi. Because Pinchas was a big kanoi, so it was hard for him with other Parshas. Chukas Balak together, Matas Maseh together, Pinchas Geit Alein. Pinchas is a kanoi. He had a lot of Talmud. He was a big man. But that's what he told them. In other words, leadership is a certain inyan. Pinchas Geit Alein. We hold from Pinchas. Like when I could mention Pinchas, but he goes himself. It's better for everybody. Sometimes you have to know what your mid is. Midas HaGvura, it's for you. It's not. You can't build a world with Gvura. Olam chesed yibana, right? You can't build a world with gvura. Everybody needs gvura, but me boit nicht a Welt with gvura, yeah? You don't build a house with gvura, you build a house with chesed. A healthy house needs gvura. Why am I saying this? Reb Pinchas of Koritz once was in a Beis HaKisei. He was in a bathroom. And he saw a blettel of Chassidus from the Torah of the Maggid, or the Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe was there. And the Reb Pinchas saw this, and he was ois mensch. And the Alter Rebbe said that he saw that Reb Pinchas' kpeda, he was so angry that he saw that it can affect the Maggid. Because he said, this is what happens with you people spreading this. It ends up in the trash. So it's like you're taking, the oitzer, and this is what happens from all this disseminating. He saw that Pinchas had a tremendous kpeda, and because he was a big neshama, a kpeda can. So the Alter Rebbe turned to the Pinchas when they came, and he said, "Ich will euch erzählen na mais. I want to tell you a story." And the Alter Rebbe said a famous story. It was a marshal, that there was a hafladik marshal, that there was a king who was an unbelievable king, and everybody loved him, and he was affluent and successful. And he had a prince, a ben Yachid. And the ben Yachid fell deathly ill. And they brought in every doctor on the planet to try to heal him, and everybody said, En mazer litrupase, there's nothing to, ein mazer lamachalase, there's nothing to do. And every day he was deteriorating until it was a matzav of shchiv meira, which means it was just a matter of days until he dies. This was the king's not only child, but the only child, and the successor. And he wasn't just a child, he was a blessed gift. And the Alter Rebbe said, Ad shehigia, there came one man. And he said he wants to go into the king. What? He has an eitzah. And he said, I have a medicine for the child. But this medicine has to be made from a certain jewel that has to be grounded into powder. And from the powder, you mix it, dilute it with water. And then this water should be given, and the herb, this powder has a power to heal him. So he said, let's get the jewel. He says there's only one type of jewel like this in the world, and it's your crown jewel on the top of your crown, the Keser HaMelech. And in the ancient history of kings, even in British, they have a little zecher of it. It's called the crown jewels of England. You go to England, you can go for a tour. They have there the treasures from the 11th century, and when they coronated now, what's his name? Charles, after his mother's death in September 2022, she died Elizabeth II. So they put on this crown. It's from like the 1100s, So there's the crown jewel. So the Alter Rebbe says that this person said that the Melech, that this stone is only on your crown jewel. And we have to take it, and it's going to destroy your crown. And this is the crown you inherited for generations and generations and generations. Alter Rebbe told Reb Pinchas, the king did not hesitate for a second. He said, take my crown and take over the crown jewel and grind it up and destroy it and dilute it with water. But the man said, at this point, your son is not capable of drinking. So he said, what can we do? He said, we could put drops by the mouth and hopefully something will go in, because he himself won't be able to do it. So the king says, even ala sofik and svek sveka, grind up the crown jewel and do this. So the Pinchas of Koritz looked at Alter Rebbe and he said, "Bis gerecht," and his kpeda was gone. This was his word. What was really the point? The point was that as history evolves, struggles become so profound and so real, and the question is, what do you do? What do you do? So there comes a point in history that the Melech says, take the crown jewel and grind it up, which is already compromising the glory of the king. And then start pouring it as though it was some dumb liquid, and you don't even know if it's going to go in. So basically you're squandering the most precious thing for what? For waste. But to save his life is more important than everything else. So this was the Alter Rebbe's mashal to the Pinchas of Koritz about why the treasure needs to be squandered. And that's what Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, Yafutza my nesecha chutza. What's Yafutza my nesecha chutza? This is it. What's chutza? Chutza, you have to be, respect an environment, bring them in. No, Yafutza my nesecha chutza means that you got to trust that ultimately it's going to hit the spot, and even if you're having a suffix or svek sveka, he says take it. That's the oitzer. So as he explains here, what's the inyan in Pnimius? It's the inyan of Oidin Sof Lamayla Adin Ketz. So he says, Loidak Nesin Estama like Boifin Shal Bizbus. Shemizeh Gufa Muvan At Kama Inyan An Nitzach Negei La Melech Atzma. From here you see how the victory is relevant to the essence of the king. It's deeper than anything. And that's why even those treasures that represent the glory of the king are going to be squandered. But what do you mean? Ice king, there's no king. No, the essence of the king. There's the melech and there's the melech atzma. The oitzer is part of the glory, and it's amazing, and it's a beautiful thing. But it's fart, legabe the melech atzma, it's chitzonius. So now where there comes a point in history, and the question is, will there be a victory or will there be a defeat? If the victory is not negated to the melech himself, he'll say, okay, I'll spend $1 million, I'll spend $100 million, I'll spend $100 billion, but atkan. There's things that you don't spend, there's things you don't give. But when it's negeya to the atzmus hamelech, now everything else is all for this. So if not for this, when? This is ad mitzui hanefesh. We learned in the Maimer, ad mitzui hanefesh, right? Mitzui hanefesh reads, the last piece of liquid is squeezed out. Mitzui hanefesh. That's the Lashon in Sifri. Alter Rebbe says to David, ad mitzui hanefesh. We learned in the previous Maimer, right? Klois hanefesh. Mitzui hanefesh. What's mitzui hanefesh? Mitzui hanefesh is everything is on the line. You don't hold anything back. It's the ultimate vulnerability, showing how deep the relationship is. If this relationship is essential and it's at the deepest place of the essence, then what am I going to hold back? If you hold back, what are you left with? It's like what did the doctor say? The surgery was successful. The patient died. The surgery was amazing. I did amazing. You had to see my precision, my scientific skills, my medical knowledge, and the movement of my hands. The patient died. Okay, it's derech hagaf. So once you understand what's the melech atzmoi, then there's no hold bars. The whole oitzid is for the melech, and this is the nitzachin, and since the nitzachin is again the melech atzmoi, therefore he's mevazbez doitzer. What's this oitzer? On this he says, the Zohar says, Oidin Sof Lamayla Den Ketz Lamata Den Tachlis. First he explained what the Lamata Den Tachlis is. And then he goes to explain what the Lamayla Den Ketz is, because only then do you understand what the Lamayla Den Ketz is. This is all the introduction till Perek Tesvav. Perek Tesvav, he explains what Lamayla Den Ketz is. Till there was Lamata Den Tachlis, which we learned in previous is what Lamata Den Tachlis is. He's going to sum it up, but very briefly. And then the main focus is what's Lamayla Adin Ketz. What's Oidin Sof Lamayla Adin Ketz? And that's what the treasure is. And that's what's given over to the soldiers to win the war. Teves Hashem. Which war? Basi Legani Achaisi Kala to make the Diri B'Tachtoinim. And this is going to be the whole Nekuda of the Soidat Tzimtzum. The Soidat Tzimtzum that was revealed by the Arizal. And then in a deeper way by the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. What the whole Tzimtzum is, and as we're going to see the whole big controversy with Tzimtzum, how he explained the Tzimtzum, Kipshutay, not Kipshutay. This Maimer touches on this sugya in a very profound way. So that's all in order to appreciate what the Oidin Sof Lamayla Adin Ketz is. Be'ezer Hashem will continue this tomorrow, Friday morning, 8 o'clock a.m. Bli Neder with God's grace. Everybody have a beautiful day. Remember to extend your arm today. And to breathe. Bruchim to you, Bruchim Abayim. Tzlach Rabba. Huh? V'yadai to Moscow is negayat to them. Yeah. There's going to be a whole varte from V'yadai to Moscow. Cedarhurst. V'yadai to Moscow and andere my mother. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get to that. This Maimer is the Maimer of Tzimtzum. This explains what a Tzimtzum is. Al pi di Yesodus of Chabad Chassidus. Tomorrow there's a class and Sunday also. Tomorrow 8 a.m. and Sunday 8 a.m. Not Monday? No. Monday I'm away. Not maybe, but Be'ezer Hashem Wednesday also. Yeah, because Wednesday evening I'm going to Eretz Yisrael, so I wanted to cover some ground. They finish Shachris here late. I mean, not late. They finish, but they daven nets. So by 8 o'clock they're finished. Tomorrow 8 o'clock and Sunday 8 o'clock. next week Sunday and Wednesday. Because Monday I'm away and Tuesday is a women's class. Huh? Huh?
That's a fast trip. You go to Israel.
No, Chicago for a day and then Wednesday to Israel. Be'ezer Hashem.
Rush here.
Huh?
There's rush here this morning. It's a crazy.
Koil haneshama tahalal yutke halalukum. You overslept a b'sigeshetze the best of mishpachas, as they say. Sigeshetze the best of mishpachas. Thank you for gracing us. The mashal. Oh, the porn, yeah. Sam Reshevsky came to the Farbrengen and the Rebbe said the sikh about chess.
That to me will give me a lot of time just to be responding on that.
No. Sam Reshevsky came Shabbos to a Farbrengen of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he was there.
And the Lubavitcher Rebbe
Said the whole sikh about chess.
Did he win?
A whole sikh.
his honor or win?
Yeah, of course it was in his honor. Yeah, why would he? Yeah, it wasn't. And he actually, you see, an interesting, but the whole vart of what the pawn is, and the neshamas lamata, and they become the queen, and they're knocked off, and they don't have the ability to jump. They can't jump. It doesn't work that way here. You're not a bishop. You can't fly, not diagonally, and not straight, and not like a horse. You know, it's a whole. You're very limited.
But when you become a queen, you can go in any direction.
Once you become a queen, then you're much greater than the malachim. That's the idea. Srafim, chayas, and fanim. He mentioned that the game of chess is already mentioned in Maseches Ksuvas, I think Samach Zayin. There's a word over there in Gemara, and the Aruch translates it as shach, shachma, shach, yeah. So it's not, that's what he explained, he's not stopped talking about it. Some attribute it to Shlomo, but the Gemara in Ksuvas, there's a line over there, in Rashi over there, that the Aruch translates, there was a word over there that Aruch translates as chess. By the way, 1984, some interesting thing. You know about Bobby Fischer? Bobby Fischer was a very complicated. Yeah, Paski. He was a world champion in chess. Huh? Both Jews. But Bobby Fischer was a self-hating Jew. Very a Jewish anti-Semite. A very interesting person. And he went into seclusion in California and he spoke about Israel and Jews. I mean, terrible things he said. Interesting, you see, Avos Yisrael, 1984, I saw a letter from the Rebbe, from the Alter Rebbe to Sam Reshevsky. So I want to ask you a favor. Bobby Fischer has been in seclusion for a long time and nobody can get to him. Maybe you can go to California because you're a chess champion and you'll have access to him. And he needs a lot of help, emotional support, and maybe you could, so interesting, like, who thought about helping Bobby Fischer? It was so interesting.
From Reshevsky, who lost to Bobby Fischer.
Yeah, Reshevsky lost. The Russians know chess, yeah? Yeah. I think in 1955, one of the years, Sam Reshevsky was playing in Moscow. It was a big thing because it was America with, it was Russia and America were sworn enemies at the time. And that's what I think Sam Reshevsky's daughter said this. She heard from her father. So in the middle there was a remission, and he asked the Kremlin if he could make a telephone call to New York. So usually they wouldn't do this, but they let him. And he made a call to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1955. He said he needs a bracha to win the Soviet Union. That's I think in 1955 or 56. He called New York from Moscow in the 50s. They gave him permission because he was there. He was a guest, and he called 770 to ask the Rebbe a bracha to win. So interesting.
Went to Fischer
yeah. I don't know if he went there. There was a letter. The Rebbe asks him a personal favor. He can go to Bobby Fischer to help him out. And he said that Sof Kol Sof he has a neshama and it's hidden, and a person like you may be able to. They were both chess champions. Oh, I don't know. Because Sam Reshevsky once came. I think he used to live in Brooklyn, and he once came to Farbrengen. And the Shabbos, the Rebbe spoke a sikh about chess. One of the sikhs he dedicated to the union of chess. No, there was no connection.
That's the connection that I asked you. That's the connection. My father-in-law was friendly with Bobby Fischer.
Oh, really? He's still alive? No.
No. That's Cuba, actually.
Du kannst fragen, sie beseden. If you're taking the kuntras, just bring it back next time. If not, just please bring it back here so I can put it away. Nehemiah's verstanden?
Not enough, but yeah.
Good answer, good answer.
More.
Good answer.
Yesterday we had
Tribal work is so step by step. And I remember Rabbi Rafael Weingarten's spot once said,
Yeah.
really, time takes time.
Yeah.
Like there's no gain out of time. It's going to take time. So this thing that a person really just to keep on putting the work into whatever
Right.
work, and eventually
Yes.
you could become a queen, and then you could.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if
That's the work, the pawn.
They can see from the beginning
Yeah.
the potential.
Exactly.
Hashem will show a person.
Exactly.
You just do the work.
Exactly.
And when you one day when you get there in a way,
Exactly.
all the focus that you always knew that you had inside.
Yes, yes.
That everyone told you maybe that you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
all those,
Exactly.
Now I get to go see. Do you know Rabbi Jacobson?
Yeah.
So he's one of my Rebbe when I first became from in YU. So I posted last time when I came to the Shir. I put on my WhatsApp status that I came to the Shir, and I realized I saw Reb Jacobson spewed. I'm like, so I was here in Monsey and I didn't go see him. And I was like, so I texted him this morning. And I texted him,
Nice.
Rabbi, I'm here. So 10:30 he's available. So I get to go
Nice.
see my Rabbi. I was at Ben Bais.
Special man.
For when I was in YU.
Special man. Send my regards. Send my regards, okay?
It was, so they took care of it. They,
So yeah, that's the whole Indian. That already in the beginning you know the potential of what you have and who you really are and what the end game is, and that changes the whole trajectory and the whole attitude. As we're gonna see later, yeah.
and the pain really is when a person is having all those problems is when and Hashem showed me so much. See, how can it be that you have so much and Hashem opens your eyes to so much Torah and you could do X, Y, and Z? How can you be a person, that voice, how could you be so low that Hashem can illuminate you and you could still do X, Y, and Z? You must really be
Yeah.
a bad person. But then when a person realizes, no, that's whatever the other voices, the other things, and then when you start to see it, that's Hashem's gift to show in person.
Exactly.
Just be patient.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for coming.